What's up, guys? This is Kaylee Johnson here with Digital Journey. If you're a person that's wanting to learn social media, maybe that's just for you personally, maybe it's for your business, this is the right place for you. Today, I'm super excited. We have Lorraine Ball here with us. This is going to be super exciting. I've been following her stuff on social media for a while now and always love the content she produces, and it's always something really informative. So, Lorraine, I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. It is so nice to be here. I always love chatting with other marketers.
Yes, it's always a good time. Well, Lorraine is a successful entrepreneur, author, and professional speaker. She enjoys sharing what she knows about marketing and presentations to groups in college classrooms around her county and in her weekly podcast, More Than a Few Words, which is really awesome and has some great content on there. So highly recommend going and checking that out. So, Lorraine, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the world of marketing.
So I have been doing this for a very long time. It's when I went back to school to get a degree, a graduate degree, I thought, well, I'm not sure if I'm really going to like this whole marketing thing. I think I should be an accountant. My accounting professor told me I would hate my life. I thought, okay, thank you for the career advice. She said, you can do it, but it's not you. You're wired like a marketing person. And she was right. And so I did marketing. I loved product management. I did a rotation through corporate, and I loved most of the time I spent in corporate. I had some really fun experiences, but there was a moment where I realized it wasn't fun anymore, and I was swimming upstream, and I thought, I should put my money where my mouth is and see if I can't do this on my own. And so I started what was originally going to be a strategy and consulting firm. I wasn't going to do any execution, just kind of work with companies, kind of help them get started, help them figure out what they needed. And I found that I got annoyed because the people that they would then hire would do a crappy job with whatever it was I told them to do. And so the little bit of the control freak in me, I started bringing that all in-house, and woke up one day about I don't know how many years later and realized I had a marketing company, and the world had changed. We had morphed into a digital agency, because when we started, there was no Facebook. There was no Twitter. There certainly wasn't TikTok or Instagram. So everything kind of changed, and it changed pretty quickly. And we just kind of rode that wave. And in 21, I sold the company. And so I'm kind of back where I was a little bit. I teach marketing at a local university, and I am once again doing consulting work and helping clients figure out what they need. The difference, I think, between now and 20 plus years ago is I have the contacts. I know who to refer people to. I know who's going to do it the way it needs to be done. So it's kind of fun coming back sort of to my roots a little bit.
That's awesome. It sounds like you've been all over the place and all of that and have a lot of experience. So that's really, really cool and exciting. And you've gotten to try out different aspects of the business world. And that's that. A lot of people don't get that much freedom. So that's super cool.
Yeah. And I always tell people, I loved owning a small business. I love the small business environment, but I always told the people that came to work for me that at some point they should do a rotation through corporate, that you should spend a couple of years working in a larger company. Number one, to figure out whether you do or don't like it, but also to get a sense of how they make decisions. And yes, there are times that it's slower, but there's also a lot of really good process that you can learn in a big company that you just don't see in small businesses. And some of that process is really important.
Very true. Yeah, I started off in a more corporate setting for a while, and so much of those skills that I learned from there have transferred over to this, and it would have been really hard to start this whole thing up without having that background experience and seeing how an organization is run and the ins and outs of it all. So I definitely agree
absolutely.
With that.
I had been running a very large creative team in corporate. And so when I started my business, I took our project management system. It was the only one I knew, and I took it with me. Well, it was way overkill for what I was doing at the time. But that system and that documenting system allowed me 19 years into the business. Somebody called me up and said, "Hey, 10 years ago, you created a logo for me. I bet you can't find." I said, 5 minutes. And I could find the digital file and get it to him because of those processes that
Yes.
we had in place.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize how much about a business is just even the internal organization of it all. And
Oh,
working for
yeah.
corporate, you have to be organized. So that's great skills to learn.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, today I want to go into a little bit about email marketing. So, do you think email marketing is dying off?
You know, email marketing has been dying, quotes
Yep.
here, for the last 15 years. Every time you turn around, they tell you, oh, it's dying. Students aren't getting email addresses. Nobody wants to read
Right.
email. Here's the thing. It's a part of how we communicate. And people have their phones and their email with them everywhere they go. And people check their email. They may grumble about it, but they check their email every day. 90% of people check it every single day. And so it is not the Wild West anymore. There are lots more hoops that you have to jump through. Your open rates and your click-through rates may be lower, but email, if it's done well, still works, and it's still one of the most effective tools out there.
No,
It,
I agree. And I think, I mean, everyone has an email. You
they
have to have
do.
an email for Apple. You have to have an email to log into a bank. Like you have to have emails. And where
Mhm.
someone might not be on a social media platform, they're on an email. And
They
so
are.
it's a great way to just automatically know, okay, I know I can contact you this way. It's going to
That,
happen.
and the other thing is when you're on social media, there are always distractions. There's the cute picture of the puppy, there's the dancing cows, there's somebody's grandkid. Okay? This is the reality. But when you open your email, and it may not be for very long, but in that moment, when you open up an email from me, I have your undivided attention. And there's power in that.
Very true. Very, very true. So, what would you say is the most important thing to remember when it comes to email marketing? A couple tips or something you have to remember this in order for email marketing to thrive.
I think the single biggest thing is building a permission-based list.
Mm,
It is so tempting to scrape email addresses just so you have a lot of people on your list, but they don't care.
mm-hmm.
And so you are way better having a smaller list of people who are really interested, because that's a much better gauge of the receptiveness of your audience. I mean, I started my email program in December of 2002.
Okay.
There are people who are on my email list today who have been getting emails from me since December of 2002, March and April of 2003.
That's
Now,
amazing.
not a
Wow.
lot, but
Right.
the people who are interested have stayed with me. Along the way, that list grew and shrank. And I think one of the things that you have to be comfortable with is letting people go.
Yes.
The list, I had 8,000 people, and I went through it and pulled anybody who hadn't opened an email from me in 6 months and said, hey, do you even still want this?
Yeah.
Today, my list has about 2,500 people, but my email campaigns have a 30 to 40% open rate.
That's great.
So it's a smaller list, but it's people who actually are interested in what I have to say. So I'd much rather be talking to them than shouting into the ocean. So I think that's the first thing is don't be afraid to cut people. Don't run to shove everybody on your list, and figure out what they really want to hear from you. I think
Mm,
those are all really critical.
Yeah, and I think one thing when you mentioned don't being afraid to keep it narrowed down is that helps you be able to write more specific content that is relevant to the people you're actually reaching. Because you're not writing content that's as broad, just trying to gain people's attention, but
Yeah.
these are the kind of things that the people I'm emailing enjoy.
Hmm.
And that's going to make them more interested in your brand and your company by saying, okay, I actually like this stuff. Let me hear more from them versus this is so generalized every time. No.
Absolutely. And the hard thing is that to do email right, it takes more time.
Hmm.
Um, to subdivide your list, and I say there are 2,500 people on my list, but I have 5 or 6 different lists. And sometimes everybody gets the same email. But sometimes I just want to send an email to the 200 people who the podcasters that I know, because I have something I'm working on that's really just relevant for them. And I want to be able to carve them out. I don't want to send that email to everyone.
Right.
Um, and there are also different kinds of emails. There are the email newsletter updates, and then there are the auto response campaigns. And when someone downloads something from your website, takes advantage of your lead magnet, the worst thing you can do is dump them into a generic email newsletter list.
Absolutely.
You've already figured out they're interested in web design, they're interested in pet dentistry just for dogs, whatever it is that they're interested in. So don't send them the generic message. They've already told you what they want to hear.
That's very valuable, and it definitely is more work. Just curating those individual emails and putting thought into it, and then even just going, especially if you've already starting off with a large email, 5,000 people, then going through each one and being like, what do they want from this? It's a lot of work, but I definitely see a whole lot of results from that. Because then people are going to open the emails and they are going to engage with it versus saying, how is this relevant to me? Only 1/3 of the things they send me actually matter to me.
So one of the things that I can do, and I think different software tools have different ways to do this, but it's called click segmentation. So I send out an email and then I'm like, hey, would you like to hear about X, Y, or Z? If you click any of those buttons, you get on those lists. If you don't, you don't. And the minute you express an interest, I pull you out of the generic list. Now you've already told me this is where you fit. So now I'm going to put you in this category. And so, the software I use Constant Contact. I've been a reseller for them forever and ever and ever. It creates those lists automatically. So I don't actually have to move you. It moves you for me.
That's awesome.
So it allows me to, again, build custom lists, custom campaigns. Sometimes I've got something that everybody wants, and sometimes I don't.
Yeah, and that's okay.
And that's okay. And now I'm going to tell you one of my favorite tricks, and this is with blogging, with podcasts, with email newsletters. You spend a lot of time creating your content, and then it's gone. The email is sent, and now it's next week, and you have to create another one. Well, if you've done this for any length of time, nobody remembers your content.
Mm-hmm.
And you can reuse, repurpose. When it comes to articles on your website, updating them will add way more value from an SEO perspective than creating a new article. And taking your email newsletter with a different introduction and covering the same topics again, number one, people won't remember. And with a little help from ChatGPT to rewrite some of your titles, it's a brand new email.
That's so good. And one thing we're really about here at Digital Journey is learning how to be efficient with our time. Because, there are some people that are content creators and enjoy spending 3-4 hours a day on the digital aspects. And then there are some people that just want to do what they need to do to be good at it, but aren't interested in that. And so being able to repurpose content and have it be evergreen is so valuable. And also it's just reinforcing those ideas into the people's head you're sending emails to. The more times we read
Absolutely.
something, the more we're going to remember it.
And you don't want, I mean, you don't want it to sound exactly the same, but it's
Right.
really funny. I did that once by mistake. I resent a campaign and my click-through rate was better. And
Interesting.
I was like,
Interesting.
what the heck? But maybe it said a nerve, maybe it felt familiar, so they wanted to learn more. Whatever it was, and I don't do that very often, but I do reuse my newsletters.
Mm-hmm.
And um, when I was doing a lot of marketing for like home service companies that have seasonal business, if I worked with a heating and air conditioning company for 3 years, by year number 3, I was resending the emails we sent in July of year number 1.
Absolutely.
Nobody would remember that. And it was good content. And I have the data. I can look at all of the emails we sent and go, you know what? That's the one we need to resend because that one knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely. That's so good to
Mm-hmm.
remember. Just, being efficient with what you have and
Mm-hmm.
not stressing out about it, but knowing what you can do for something to be great without spending hours and hours and more time in it than you need.
No, and I think one of the mistakes that a lot of small businesses make is a lot of small businesses and solopreneurs don't put a value on their time. Well, it
Mm-hmm.
took me 2 hours. Okay, it took you 2 hours. What would it, what could you have done in that 2 hours that would have generated revenue, that would have added more value to your business? And if that's the case, can you pay someone $20 an hour to
Right.
do? The first time I hired an assistant to take all the business cards that I would pick up because I was running around trying to make friends, networking my little butt off. And I was going everywhere. And I'd come home with these stacks of cards and be like, okay, every one of these people, I want them on the newsletter. But these people in this stack, I want you to send them a note that says, hey, I really enjoyed meeting you. It was, we had a great conversation, would love to continue it. These people just put in the database. And then I would go off and do something else, maybe go to another networking event
Mm-hmm.
while she was making all that happen. And I was paying her, 10, $12 an hour. It was
Right.
worth every penny.
Right. Yeah. Virtual assistants are something that can be so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you said, putting a price on our time. Or
Mm-hmm.
even, especially as entrepreneurs and small business owners, we think, okay, we need to learn how to do this. And it's like, do what you're good at. If you
Mm-hmm.
can pay someone else to do something that, you really hate or that takes you a super long amount of time, like have someone else do it because it is going to save
Mm-hmm.
your time. Which is why one of the reasons with Digital Journey, we work on like, how can you make a social media post that's not going to take 3 hours to craft? How can you do
Mm-hmm.
it in 15 minutes? What tools can you use? That kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Because, time is money.
Absolutely. And I have not turned over all my marketing to ChatGPT and I won't, but I got to tell you, I can take one of my blog posts and go to ChatGPT and say, turn this into 10 social media updates.
Yes.
And I can take those updates and upload them into Canva and say, here's my template, populate my template.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do those things easily. And
Yes.
so I have to create the original article or the original content, but I don't need to do the rest.
Exactly. And that's so valuable to take advantage of the resources you have. And I love what you said, you're creating the original work. So you're not
Mm-hmm.
saying, ChatGPT, you do all of this, because then that loses some
Mm-mm.
of that personal touch, but you're creating the original work and then using the tools available. And I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's
because
awesome.
otherwise ChatGPT left to its own devices is either very stiff, sounds like my high school English professor, or sounds like a college frat boy.
Yeah,
Yo, bro, this is really, and neither of those voices are mine.
exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's really great. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. I really, really appreciate it. Where can we find you? Where can we find if we want to reach out to you?
So the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
That's where I hang out from a business perspective. And you can find more than a few words wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yes, and again, I would highly recommend listening to that. Lorraine does a great job with everything, and it's always very informative. And we'll drop all that stuff in the description down below. Again, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a pleasure.
This was so much fun. Thank you for having me.